interesting output that I always encourage people to include is an analysis of customer acquisition costs, because most every investor is going to expect to see this. So the way that I do this is I actually break it down by parts of the funnel. So in this case, this is a pretty flat funnel. Essentially, we raise customer awareness and then we move people to a website and then they buy or they don't buy. So it's just awareness and then we make an offer. Now, what you can see here is that because I'm tracking success metrics in my model, I'm able to actually calculate the results I'm getting from each part of my funnel and the cost. And that lets me calculate my customer acquisition costs, right? That means that I can also, based on the customer lifetime value, which I'll show you in a minute, but basically is just my sales price of my product and my assumption about how long the customer will stay with me, I can calculate one of the golden ratios for investors, which is the customer acquisition cost to lifetime value ratio. Basically, this means once I acquire a customer, what multiple of the cost to acquire them do I make back when they stay with me? So you can see, for example, that in this model actually has kind of a B2C and a B2B component. We're not going to get too twisted off on that, but you can see that on the B2C side, I've got like a 1.35, 1.36 CAC to LTV ratio, which is really pretty good. On the consumer side, it means that basically for every dollar I invest in customer acquisition, I'm going to get like 360 in revenue, which is a pretty interesting proposition if I can continue to do that, right? If you said to an investor, give me $1 and I can turn it into $3.6 of revenue, the investor is going to be pretty excited about that. So I know I'm going pretty fast. Does anyone have questions about that? Does that make sense to people? If you do have questions, just stick them in the chat. But this is kind of the heart of the numbers that investors are interested in. They want to see how everything that you're planning to do is going to benefit them, right? And so going to them and saying, hey, I know how to take your dollar and turn it into 350 or 360 of revenue is going to make them very, very happy. And it's going to, again, catapult you into a very different category than most of the people they're talking to. Now, lastly, and again, these are just things that you can set up in your own model. You can set up a page where you have charts. And for example, the revenue numbers, which the B2B number is really small. That's why it doesn't show here, but it is there. I promise you can see the gray. You can create a nice little chart attached to your model. What that helps you do is instead of having to recreate the charts and graphs every time you change your model, it'll automatically update if it lives inside your model, and you can just copy this chart and paste it into wherever it belongs in your pitch deck or your presentation. So those are kind of the output tabs that I would expect to see. Now, between the two is what I would call the detailed P&L. So this is mostly an output tab, although in this case, we've added a little bit of input area here because sometimes people don't think about G&A in the way they don't allocate G&A to the different activities that they're doing. So in this tab, instead of seeing your P&L by year, you're actually seeing it by month, and it's got a lot more detail, right? So it's breaking down where my revenues come from, it's breaking down where my cost of goods sold comes from, and it's breaking down each of my departments, right? Which you did see the totals from here. But if you go to the detailed tab, then you can get the line item detail of each of those, okay? Now, one thing I will tell you is this approach, these categories over here are not accounting pro forma categories. So I would not build this particular model as a pro forma. It's not a GAAP pro forma, meaning it doesn't comply to get generally accepted accounting principles in terms of how it allocates the costs on a line by line item. It does in terms of what the department is. However, early stage investors, in my experience, are not interested in your projection being pro forma unless you have some really strange revenue recognition issues, like you sell a contract now and the revenue is recognized over 36 months. But you can still build that into your model so that you're accurately representing what the profit or loss of your business would be. So don't get too hung up on whether or not it is a pro forma or GAAP compliant initially. You can always get it vetted by an accountant later who can help you figure that out or make adjustments if you need to. But generally speaking, what investors are interested in is, when do you make money, how do you make money, and what does it cost you to get there, right? And so again, we can see all the detail here, but where it starts to get really interesting is if we go back to what I call the assumptions tab, right?